After 12,000 miles in my 2024 Subaru Outback Wilderness, I think it might be time to say goodbye. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh, and over the past 3 years, I have built two Subaru Outback Wildernesses. The first one is a 2022, and if you're new to the channel, you have probably not much clue about that one. And my second Outback Wilderness is the 2024, the black Outback Wilderness. And I've started to notice some things that it took 30,000 miles for me to notice in my 2022. I'm noticing now after 12,000 miles. All right, so listen, I need to preface this video with a few things. First one being, I did not want to make this video, and I wasn't intending to make this video until last week. My wife sent me a text when she had taken the Subaru out to run some errands, and that text was, the Sub is riding rough. Now, if you're new here, you probably know none of this. If you've been around for a while and you've watched a lot of videos, then you will possibly remember my wife has this weird sixth sense intuition when it comes to noticing things about cars. I always dismiss them. Right out of the gate, I generally dismiss them simply because I don't notice them. So if I don't notice them, I don't know how she's qualified enough to notice them, but she does. And when she sent me that text, I texted her back and I said, I was going to say the same thing, but I didn't want to say anything because I wanted to see if you noticed. And that's the premise of this entire video. So I have a fan going in the background because it's hot in my garage. I'm back in the garage because I just needed to get this video done. I'm not at Grumpy's. I'm going to talk through the four things that I'm experiencing in my 2024 Outback Wilderness. I'm not making this to bash Subaru. I'm not trying to sway anybody's decision on buying this car. I would love to know if you have any experiences that are very similar to this, or you've had them in the past and what you've done to remedy them, because at this point, I'm starting to get a little concerned that I'm gonna have to trade this car in or get rid of this car much sooner than I expected. So before we get started on the four things that I'm experiencing, I need you to know that I'm gonna be doing a lot of talking, and if you think I talk too much, don't watch the video. But the first thing I'm experiencing is a much rougher ride than when I picked it up from the factory, when I picked it up from the dealership. So I need to stop anybody there who's going to say anything about suspension, because I have not changed my suspension. I did put different tires on, Nitto Nomad Grapplers, and I put Sparco 17-inch wheels on. The offset is slightly different, and when I put those on, I did notice the ride change slightly. As you can expect, when you put bigger tires and different wheels on your car from different than what you get from the factory, it changes the ride. It's generally a little bit rougher. You hear a little bit more road noise, but overall, I knew what I was going to get. I was fine with it, and I put them on anyways, and everything has been fine up until this point. So after 30,000 miles in my white Outback Wilderness, I started to notice that the car just rode very rough. It was just, I don't want to say clunky, but you felt every single hole in the ground, and I just attributed that to putting the Ironman suspension kit on it. I also attributed that to off-roading in Moab, to pulling a trailer through the desert in Joshua Tree on off-road trails. I really rode the white Outback Wilderness hard. That car went through a lot. So the justifications for that, I wasn't surprised that the car was starting to ride rough because it had been through a lot of trails. It was damaged on the trail in West Virginia. It went through a lot. So I get it. I beat that car up, and that's what you get when you beat a car up. It starts riding rough. But the black Outback Wilderness, the 2024, has 12,000 miles on it, factory suspension. I haven't changed anything, no new springs, nothing. And it's starting to ride as rough as my white Outback Wilderness was. I'm starting to feel every single thing in the road. The handling is not as good. It's like at a certain point with these cars, something happens and, it's no longer a new car. It's got 12,000 miles on it. And the only thing I've done in this car is storm chase. Granted, I've gone down gravel roads and I've gone down some dirt roads and I've gone down them at a reasonable speed, 30 or 40 miles an hour, depending upon the situation and depending upon the terrain. But I can't justify in my mind why at this point, after 12,000 miles, this car is riding as bad as a car that's the exact same make that had 30,000 miles on it with a bunch of suspension work, new tires, and it had been through the ringer in terms of off-road trails. So I would love to know if you're experiencing that. It just feels like the car rides rougher. It's not as comfortable. It's not as easy to drive. It's not as relaxing to drive. Like everything, you notice everything a lot more than what I did when I picked it up. The next thing that I'm noticing is a really big concern. And it sounds like the transmission is whining. I don't really know how to explain that to you. I tried to capture the sound on video and I put a microphone like outside the car and it was just wind noise. And it's not when I'm going really fast, but when I'm at a full turn and I'm accelerating or I'm accelerating at all, it sounds like that CVT is whining. It's a higher pitched noise than what the motor makes, and it's very, very noticeable. I know CVTs historically have had issues, and I know a lot of people's biggest complaints with Subaru is their CVT. I have to say, I'm not a Subaru guy. I've had two. Both of them have been on this channel. I've built both of them on this channel. Those are the only two Subarus that I have experience with. So I can't talk to the way the CVT operates. I can't talk to why this may be happening, and I'm really looking for other people's opinions and if other people have had this similar issue. But it seems like when I take off from a stoplight, when I'm turning into a gas station, when I'm just accelerating, going dead straight, we are having the whining sound coming from the transmission. And the biggest reason that that's a huge, well, it's multiple reasons why it's a huge concern. Yes, it would be covered under the Subaru factory warranty, not concerned about that, but I put the car into situations that I don't want to have a transmission issue if I'm in the middle of nowhere America with a storm bearing down on me. The 2024 Outback Wilderness is strictly been for errands, running around the city, and going storm chasing. I made the decision that I'm not going to take this thing on any trails like I took the white one, simply because I have other vehicles that are much more suitable for that type of terrain. There's absolutely no point for me to continue putting a car through something that it's just not necessarily made to do. But I would love to know if you or anybody you know has had similar experiences, because I'm concerned that this transmission is already starting to have problems after only a short 12,000 miles. The third issue that I want to talk about is what I'm going to refer to as stuttery stops. And I hope that makes sense to you. It may not make sense. Maybe I'll explain it and it will click for you, or maybe you've never had this issue and I'm just the only person that's ever had it. In my 2022, the white Outback Wilderness that I had, towards that 25,000 mile mark, I started noticing when I was going up to stoplights or stop signs, or I was slowing down to a stop, that the car, and I'm moving my head in a stupid way, like I expect you to understand that, the car would stutter to stop. It was almost like the rotors weren't catching the calipers weren't catching the rotors, and the brakes were having trouble. So much so that in a previous video, my wife had mentioned that she made me get the brakes changed. It didn't feel like brakes, it didn't sound like brakes, but that's the only thing I could attribute it to, because I'd never had a Subaru with a CVT before. So I got the brakes changed, I had the rotors refaced, I had new calipers put on, and everything was good, and we took it on a trip across the country. And we drove to Tucson, Arizona. And it was still doing the same exact thing. And I think this stuttery stop issue is another problem with the CVT. So if you've had that, or you can explain that better than I am, because I'm not a professional by any means, I'm just a guy in a garage. So I don't have any technical expertise when it comes to the CVT and how it operates. But when I'm coming to a stop, it feels like the brakes are grabbing and letting go. But I know it's not the brakes, it has to be something within the transmission itself. And it's a huge concern, because I noticed this in my 22, but it was far beyond the amount of miles that I have on my 24. And my 24 has been babied compared to my 22. So at 12,000 miles, I'm already starting to notice a lot of issues, and they all seem to be stemming from one location, and that's the transmission. So the number 4 problem I'm having, well, that's also more so the computer, I believe. And I mentioned this in a previous video, and then people harassed me for driving 85 miles an hour. So I'm going to say this now. There are times I drive between 80, 85, and 90 miles per hour. And if you've ever been in Nowhereville, Nebraska on I-80, it's an 80 mile an hour speed limit. So, you know, it just exists, I guess is my point. It exists out there, so driving 85 isn't that crazy. But the point I'm making is between that 80 and 85 mile an hour mark, it seems like the transmission is hunting for gears. But the CVT doesn't work that way. So it's not actually hunting for gears, but it feels like the computer is trying to figure out where to place the vehicle so I have the smoothest ride, is the best way I could probably explain it. And it hops around, and the RPMs jump up and down, and it's not a problem. It's not extremely bad. It doesn't scare me when I'm driving and I think like the transmission is going to fall out of the car. But the issue is, you know, it's a brand new car, essentially. It's not that old. And this was happening right when I bought it. I had less than 1,000 miles on it. I had not put any wheels on it. I didn't even put a light on it yet. And it had factory everything. And this car was hunting for gears, even though that's not what it's doing. It's the best way I can describe it to you, on my way up to northern Ohio. So something was happening in that computer where it was having trouble delineating which gear or where it should be in the transmission cycle, and it starts to jump around and hunt around, and it's a very strange feeling from a brand new car. I understand the computer systems are probably rather intricate, and it's not as easily explained by some guy sitting in front of a computer, or I'm sitting in front of a camera. But the point is, there's something going on there, and I have had other people that have mentioned that to me before. So if it's something that you're experiencing, or you know of a solution, or maybe there's a software update. I've done all the software updates. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to describe it better, but it seems to be that this transmission in a 12,000 mile a car with 12,000 miles on it, is starting to have some serious problems. All right, so before we say goodbye today, I don't want this to come off as, I'm not looking for clicks, likes, subscribe, shares. I don't personally give a shit about any of that. What I'm saying is I'm experiencing these things. And if others are experiencing these things, it would be helpful to me as well as others in the community that we just have a conversation about them. I'm not saying Subaru is a bad company. I love my Subaru and I love my 2022. It is the perfect car for me in a lot of situations. And there are other cars that are better for me in other situations. And I think that's pretty standard across the board. This is not an attack on Subaru. I'm just concerned that a car with 12,000 miles that has very light modifications, mostly interior and exterior stuff that have nothing to do with motors, transmissions. I just put bigger wheels on it. And a lot of these issues were happening prior to the bigger wheels. So I don't want this to come off as that type of video. And Subaru, if you're watching, it's not an attack on you. I'm just saying I'm having some problems, and I'm hoping, I don't hope other people are having them, but if other people are having them, I'm hoping that we're willing to communicate to try to figure out what this is, because it's become, I've gotten to the point to where I'm extremely close to just getting rid of it. I don't want to deal with any problems in a 12,000 mile car. A car that's got 12,000 miles on it, I shouldn't have to be concerned when I'm running across the country back and forth that it may not make it in a situation where, as dramatic as this may sound, my life could honestly depend on it if a storm is producing a tornado. That's not the way I want to go out, is what I'm getting at. But so I hope this video was helpful. Again, I'm not trying to bash anybody, but if you've had any of these experiences, please leave them in the comments. It would be extremely helpful for me, as well as others, to kind of communicate about these issues, and maybe we can get to some solid footing and kind of figure out what's going on and help each other make our situations better. Okay, that's it. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you on the next one.